If you're a first-time buyer already living in Toronto, maybe you're thinking of coming here, there's a decent chance that you've been sitting on the fence for a while. Years of bidding wars, rising interest rates, non-stop alarmist headlines cause a lot of people to pause instead of taking action. If you're planning on moving to or maybe within Toronto in 2026, you're walking into a market that's been largely shaped by those pauses that people have been doing. There's more inventory, there's less urgency, there's very different dynamics than a few years ago. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what I would do if I were starting from scratch in 2026, whether I already lived in the city or whether I was moving to Toronto for the very first time. Okay, so let's start with money. You sort of have to when you're talking about buying real estate, especially in Toronto. It's a very expensive place. And we're going to start off with down payment funds. So the first thing I want to say is that you don't need a 20% down payment. I think there's a lot of misconception out there that says that you do need 20% or more. The way the down payment rules are, and they've changed somewhat recently, is that you need 5% on the first 500,000. You need 10% on the next, let's call it million. So up to 1.5 million. And then if you're buying anything 1.5 million or above, you need 20% on the whole amount. So it kind of changes a little bit there. Under 1.5 million, it's a bit of a hybrid. Let's say you're buying something for 800,000, just as an example, it's 5% on the first 500,000 and then 10% of the next 300,000, 500 plus 300. If you're buying something for 1.2, it's 5% on the first 500,000, 10% on the next 700,000. Now, as far as down payment funds are concerned, you absolutely want to take advantage of two different kinds of accounts that are available to you. First, home buyer's savings account. You can save up to $40,000 and it is largely tax deductible money. So what that means is you put money in, you get like a tax credit for what you put into it. And the amazing thing about that account is that you don't have to pay those funds back over time, which is different from your RRSP home buyers plan, where you can use your RRSP to save up to $60,000 and you can get a tax credit every time you make a contribution to it. But you have to, if you're using that money for buying a property, you have to pay that money back. I think it's across 15 years. So that's what separates the FHSA from the RRSP account. As far as lump sum money that's required to buy a property, you also need money for land transfer tax. I've talked about it lots in other videos, but the great thing about being a first-time buyer is that there are rebates available. So both for the provincial and the municipal portions of land transfer tax, combine them, it's up to almost $8,500, which is fantastic. So after you sorted out the plan for your down payment funds, you'll want to look at getting a mortgage pre-approval. Don't just kind of get like a quick overview from the bank. I highly recommend going through a mortgage broker, but if you're going to go to your bank, which is fine, make sure that you're getting a formal review of your income, credit, your debts, the source of your down payment. That's really important because if you don't do those things, then you don't really have a true sense of what it is that you would qualify for. So it's important that you go through the full process of like submitting documents and making sure that everything is being looked at. I would also very highly encourage you to get a rate hold from whoever it is that you're getting your pre-approval from. Right now, the Bank of Canada has been holding their rates kind of steady. That impacts variable rates, but there's been a ton of volatility with fixed rates because of the bond yield and all that kind of stuff, whatever. But fixed rates have been kind of flying all over the place. So just to get kind of peace of mind and the idea of like, okay, here's what I would, if I buy in the next 3 to 4 months, here's the interest rate that I would get. I think it's really important that you can get a rate hold. Another reason why I think it's really important for you to go through that formal pre-approval process is because of the stress test, which is still in place right now, and it can largely impact what it is that you qualify for. So right now the floor is either 5.25%, regardless of what the interest rates are, right? 5.25%, or the rate at which you probably would purchase for, plus this like ghost kind of phantom 2%. So right now at time of recording, rates are, let's call it somewhere between 3.5 and 4%-ish for fixed. So if we take the bottom of that 3.5 and add 2%, you're actually qualifying at 5.5%, even though your payment will be at 3.5 or whatever it is that you qualify for, 3.5 somewhere up to 4%. So again, you don't go through that formal process, you're going to be looking at a certain price point and the payments that come at a certain rate, but you don't actually qualify for that amount because you need to be stress test. So bear that in mind. Your next steps, I believe, and this is going to sound like homework, I'm sorry, but I think it's really important, go through a self-assessment. Understand what your needs and your wants are. Needs are must-have deal breakers. Wants are nice-to-haves. They are things that you would like to have, but if a place kind of doesn't have them, but it checks all your must-have boxes, you can live with it. There's no question that there are some things that you will discover as you are looking. When you're doing your kind of self-assessment, it's very much like an on-paper kind of thing, and you'll start to learn a little bit more as you start looking at properties, truly what your deal breakers and non-deal breakers are. But I think it's really important to go through that assessment before you start looking so that you can kind of narrow the field both to what kind of property you're looking for and the area that you're looking for as well. I would very strongly recommend that when you're undergoing that self-assessment for your needs and your wants, you're trying to do, if you can, like a 5-year outlook. Generally speaking, if you're buying real estate and staying in that place for a minimum of 5 years, you're okay. Now, these previous 5 years have proven that that mantra is wrong. If you bought a condo or even a house in 2021, your prices are down. For a house, it's a little bit less than what the decline has been for a condo. But try and envision what your life is going to look like over the next 5 years. Generally speaking, you're probably going to be safe for your investment, as well as how that property is going to serve you over that next relatively short period of your life. The next thing you're going to want to do is your neighborhood research. I would recommend that you do it from the comfort of your own couch. So use Google Maps, use Google Street View, if schools are important to you, there are tools like Find Your School, through TDSB or whatever. Use social media. TikTok is great for looking up things geographically. Its search function, I find personally, is much better than Instagram, for example. Use Reddit as well. Be careful when you're on Reddit. There's all kinds of, be careful when you're on TikTok too, but take your findings and merge them with your needs and your wants. Make sure that you pair those things up from the previous section that I talked about with what you're discovering with those tools. Now, once you think you've got it narrowed down to certain areas, I would start going to those areas. Go out for breakfast, go out for lunch, go for a walk in the park, drive up and down some of the streets just to get a sense of, what the curb appeals are like or what the vibe of the street is or the neighborhood, whether it's sketchy, whether it's not sketchy. There's some things that you'll see better in person than you'll be able to with Google Maps. So I would recommend visiting those neighborhoods in person. Now, the last thing that I'm going to say, and this obviously comes with a lot of bias, but I'm going to suggest that you get connected with a professional, somebody who is at least Toronto-centric. If you feel really strongly about working with somebody who solely operates out of a particular neighborhood, that's fine. The thing that I would say is that you'd want to make sure that that person has some kind of sense of other neighborhoods as well, because you maybe would or wouldn't be surprised that people who are kind of really strongly focusing on a particular area end up buying something outside of that area. So I think it's good to have a diverse set of knowledge personally when you're working with a professional. Again, comes with bias, but I think that will give you a really great head start on your search by not doing too much on your own once you're ready to start seeing places and seeing them with someone who can learn more about you and what's important to your housing needs. So if you're a first-time buyer and you're thinking about making a move in Toronto or to Toronto in 2026, the biggest mistake I think you can make is doing nothing because the process feels overwhelming. So if you want help figuring out whether buying actually makes sense for you, your income, your timeline, your comfort level, you can book a no-pressure call with me. You'll find a link to how to do that in the description below. I'm Jamie Harnish with Bosley Real Estate. This is Toronto Home Search, and this is how I would do it if I were buying a home in 2026.